So I immediately started investing in with other people. And the first investment I made in Dayton, Ohio was a 15-minute talk to, and I didn't know anything about syndication, nothing much, but I'm kind of a guy, I put my money down to learn.
Welcome to Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast, your ultimate guide to passive income through real estate investing. Join us as we together discover the secrets of building wealth one passive investment at a time.
From expert insights to inspiring success stories, this podcast will inspire you and empower you to take control of your family's financial future so you can live life on your own terms.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast. We are your hosts today, Param Singh and Rav Singh from Spur Equity. And on our podcast, on the Spur Your Wealth podcast, what we aim to do is bring successful investors and experts and thought leaders onto the podcast to share their story and secrets in investing so we can all stand to benefit from their experience. And today, we are really fortunate to have one of our dear friends, KayKay Singh, on today's episode. So this is somebody that is a friend of ours and someone who both Rav and I admire and look up to. So KayKay is a serial entrepreneur and businessman. So he owns gas stations, laundromats, reception centers, but also has several years ago, ventured into multifamily investing, both as a passive investor as well as an active investor. And so he now manages multifamily assets for all of his investors, brings them along. So he's been a powerhouse in the multifamily game for several years, and somebody who we've aspired to follow in his footsteps. So KayKay Singh, welcome to the Spur Your Wealth podcast. Really happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Param and Ravi Singh, to have me on your show today. I'm so delighted to share my success story. I've been here in United States for the last 23 years. And I have grown from zero to a millionaire, and I'm very open. So I'll be sharing my success stories with some numbers as well. So I came here in 2000 as a Microsoft certified system engineer and lost my job after 9/11. And after losing my job, I decided to get into the gas station business because I had some friends, they were in the gas station business, and they offered me some partnership in their business, and I jumped into the gas station business because at that time I didn't want to go back because I had come with my family. Mm-hmm. So I got into the gas station business. And still today, as of today, I am still in the gas station business, but I diversified into other different businesses. And all of a sudden, somebody offered me a single-family portfolio of 40 single-family houses at our Gurdwara Sahib. And he was 82 years old. He wanted to retire. His kids did not want to take over his legacy. Mm-hmm. So he promised me to train me for a year, and but since he was 82 years old and he was old school, he was doing everything with pen and paper, and I was a IT professional. So after 10 days, I decided that no, that's not the way I can afford time to spend on those 40 single-family houses. And I let him go after 10 days, and I moved everything online and started managing that portfolio myself. Mm-hmm. And after having bought those single-family portfolio, a lot of people started approaching me to sell their 5, 2, 3 units.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I discussed with some real estate professional and asked him, he said, don't put all eggs in the same basket. And the reason we bought that was one was that he offered us that deal, and it was a pretty sweet deal he gave us. And the second thing, we were paying a lot of taxes at that time because we had 8 gas stations. So there was a lot of cash flow, and we had a lot of income from all those gas stations. And we decided to get into multifamily to offset some of our taxes.
Right,
Oh,
right.
excellent.
Well, that's beautiful. We often talk about this in our podcast that love hearing the immigrant story, right? Successful people coming to the country, doing hard work, and then making it, right? I mean, that's the success. That's what America brings to us. And for you, kind of talk to us regarding, when you were offered that 40 single family home portfolio. Talk about the mindset. Talk about, were you scared? I mean, did you see that as an opportunity? What was going through your mind at that point when you were thinking of that, I have no idea, I have no education in this, but yet you're willing to take yet another leap of faith, right? By getting into the investment field.
So when somebody offered me this, first of all, this guy is very trusted in our community. So everything, every word he said was truth. Nothing like a businessman. And he told me everything black and white. What are the problems in this business and everything. And I didn't get scared from this because I had been in the business for 15 years here, and previously 10 years I was in business in India as well.
Okay.
So I had a business mindset.
Yeah.
And I had done a lot of acquisition for myself, and also I had done some acquisition for my family and friends during these 25 years.
Right.
So I had a complete, and in my life, I had a very short time when I had a job.
Right.
And I noticed that job is not something that fits my personality, because I was kind of a leader, leading, not listening to. I was not used to listening to somebody, my boss or somebody else. I wanted to do things the way I liked.
Right.
Right.
So I was not at all scared to jump into this, even though I didn't have any knowledge
Sure.
about the multifamily, and I didn't even know what the cap rate is at that time,
Yeah.
because gas stations are not bought on cap rates.
Sure.
They're underwritten different ways, and we have different ways. I'm not going to start discussing that today, but I trusted this guy, and whatever he told me, and he showed me some paperwork as well. I didn't even ask for his tax returns.
Right.
I didn't ask for any of his financials. All I looked up the value of the houses online and see, and then we jumped and we compared everything to the gas station income.
Yeah.
How much was the investment? How much was
Yeah.
the income? So that's all we compared.
Sure. And you understood risk, right? I mean, obviously, your background, having worked in India in terms of business side and then coming here, I mean, I think anybody who's leaving their home country, going into a totally different country, different language, different people, everything different, and you go with a survival mindset, right? And so you already have that hunger and the thirst in you. And so you basically capitalized on that. You just took that to the next level and said, okay, well, I'll just take whatever it is because A, it's coming from good reputation for that guy that you're buying from. You'll just take it and you'll just sort of legitimize the business itself by professionalizing it. And so that's exactly what you did.
Correct. Fear is not something is my thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have been very fearless in businesses. I have done deals too. I bought 2 gas stations at the same time. I bought event center at a sheriff sale. I have bought 3 laundromats that were all total rundown, and
Yeah.
everybody was scared of them. And I saw the opportunity in them because there was a value add opportunity. So this is something that I am very used to, and I have done acquisitions, even though I was in the gas station business, but I was doing acquisitions and then making the systems and processes, and then let my partners run the
Right.
business.
Right.
And I moved to the next opportunity. And within 60 miles of Fort Wayne, I knew every gas station, the owners, the sales, and which were profitable business. So for several years, when I was in the acquisition for the gas stations, I looked at every gas station in every city, every town,
Wow.
around 60 miles from Fort Wayne. Whenever I heard about some town or some gas station being sold, the first thing I would use is go drive up there
Yeah.
and look at the gas station. And I had so much experience that I could tell from the dumpster, the trash dumpster, that how much is the sale of the gas station.
Right.
That's
You could
really
have been a
good.
dangerous broker, let me just tell you that. If you would have gotten into the real estate field on the brokerage side, I think you would have just killed it.
Definitely, that was not something I looked at. I always looked to be an entrepreneur.
Right, right, right.
So I love we talk about mindset, we talk about risk. So, yeah, there's going to be risk in everything that we do. And you understand that risk, right? Coming from, again, like leaving your country, coming here, obviously there's risk involved. But then if your mindset is like Rav said, is a survival mindset that, hey, within anything that we do, it may feel scary, but there's opportunity. If there's opportunity there, again, you have to calculate that risk, whether that's worth to take. And look, everything's not going to work out, right? But if you have that mindset that, hey, I'm going to make this work, and if it doesn't work, I can move on to the next thing, right? And so I think that's what you've done, in your journey, both on on the job side. Like when the job thing didn't work, you immediately switched to entrepreneurship and said, hey, this is where I can make a difference. And then the other thing I really liked about what you said was, don't necessarily always do the things that other people are doing, right? Like you took that 40 unit portfolio immediately, and then within 10 days you're like, no, I can do this better, I can manage this better, it'll make it easy for me. And you mentioned about the laundromats too, is like you come in, you understand the business, you put the systems and processes in place so that it allows you to remove yourself from that equation and say, okay, I'm going to put in a manager and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. And that's really, I think that's a lot places where people actually struggle. I know we did early on when we owned a small multifamily in San Antonio. We struggled removing ourselves from the equation. We were doing everything. We were doing the property management. We were doing the asset management. We were, processing evictions. We were doing all of that. But we did, I think people that excel and scale are people like you that are like, hey, let me put a process in place so that somebody else can do this for me, and then I can move on to my next project. So, talk about kind of how you did that in multifamily. We understand it from the gas station standpoint, but when you started in multifamily, how did that journey start, and how were you able to scale that whole model?
So when I bought these 40 single family houses, I thought we own the real estate now. We won't be paying any taxes or very little taxes. But that wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up paying even more taxes that year.
Money, yeah.
Because we closed in June and we made about 70,000 income over the 6 months, and we ended up even paying more.
Yeah.
So I went to my accountant and asked him that people own real estate and they don't pay taxes. Why do we have to pay even more taxes? And he explained me about the multifamily syndication, cost segregation stuff. And I said, why didn't you tell me that before? He said, you never hired me for that. You hired me for the gas station business. You never asked me about these things. So
Yeah.
I didn't tell you anything about it. I immediately started investing in and my intention was not to become a general partner or be on the GP side. My intention, because I had so many businesses, my intention was only to be a limited partner at that time. So I immediately started investing with other people. And the first investment I made in Dayton, Ohio was a 15-minute talk to, and I didn't know anything about syndication, nothing much, but I'm kind of a guy, I put my money down to learn.
That's great.
So I just wrote him a check after 15 minutes of talking to him for 50,000, and let's get in this game and let's get started. So after that, I started learning a little bit, and I kept investing almost every month. So I was invested in 7 or 8 deals when Rodcliffe offered me a coach to be his coach.
Right.
I was at one of his events, And he came up to me and said in my ear that, can you meet me after 15 minutes? And the reason was I was raising hand on every time when he asked me a question.
Right.
So I was trying to answer every question because I had learned so much.
Sure.
Right.
So he asked me, okay, can you? He talked to me about being his coach. I said, yeah, that will be great because that way I can repeat myself.
Yeah.
So I started coaching for him and also joined his mastermind.
Excellent.
That's where I met someone from the mastermind, and he offered me a general partnership to raise 500,000 for him because they were short 500,000 and they were supposed to close that Friday. It was Tuesday, and we were in San Diego.
Right.
So he gave me all the paperwork and everything, and I knew how to look at the underwriting, how look at the
Yeah.
co-store reports, etc. So I did that all on the plane while coming from San Diego to Chicago. I did all that. I bought an internet and
Yeah.
studying about it, and this deal was 225 units in Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
And I came back and I started calling my friends and family, and I raised 550
Uh-huh.
for him
In a
to
couple of days.
become a general partner
Yeah.
in 3 days. And I
Yeah.
also personally invested 100,000 in that deal. And we sold that property after 2 years, and our money became it was 1.81 equity multiple in 2 years.
Right, right. You
So
know, I love exactly. I love what you're saying, but the most part I loved about was that you invested in education, you invested in yourself, and you put your money where the mouth is, right? So, we say this all the time that your business grows to the extent that you grow, right? And so you took that leap of faith once again, and you started understanding. You put the money in, but then you started learning in yourself, and your business started growing. And so I just love that aspect of it. The fact, yeah, some people have all the money that they have, and they don't know what to do with it, and so they just want to see it in front of them, and so they'll put it in the bank and whatever they need to do, right? But you took that leap of faith again, and that paid you dividends. That paid you more than you could probably expect it.
correct, correct. That's absolutely correct. And I'm kind of a person. When I built these laundromat, the first laundromat, there was a vacant lot by my gas station, so I bought that to build a laundromat there. And the reason I decided to build a laundromat because there was a laundromat down the street, about a block away from us, that was old, beaten up laundromat, and customers were coming to get the change from us, and they were always complaining.
Yeah.
They were always complaining about the laundromat, and I had never been to a laundromat before that when I
Right.
decided to build a laundromat. So at that time, there was no book on laundromat, there was no podcast on laundromat, there wasn't much information online. But I did 1 year of research before I started building the laundromat.
Wow.
But, so I take risks, but I take calculated risks.
Calculated
I
risk.
don't just take blind risks and see that if my fortune works or not. But I do lots and lots of calculations and lots of research before I jump into
Right.
anything
Right.
bigger.
That's good. That's good. So, Paji, let's kind of switch a little bit and let's talk about the why, right? We all are working hard. Why do you do what you do, right?
I think
Yes, please go ahead.
I think it's the same reason as all of us here, at least. That's the why is to leave a legacy for our kids. So my son was. I never wanted to be in the multifamily as a GP myself. It accidentally happened. I never wanted to be in the real estate because the first time he offered me at our Gurdwara, he offered me, he said, "Oh, I have to sell you this." Oh, no. I said, "No, no, no. I know someone in Indianapolis that does that. I can't do that." He said, "No, I want to sell you."
Ah,
So I said, "Why me?" And he said, "The reason I want to sell you because I have sold them twice and they couldn't close, and I know you can close."
uh-huh.
So answer to your question again, why? Why is because I wanted to pave a way for my son. He was young at that time and he was in school, and I wanted him to take over the business, not to get into the mindset of going into job or like that. So I wanted to pave a smooth way for him to take over my business and get into the multifamily. And while he was in college, he started with an internship with the Barrett Asset Management. And then they liked his job and they liked him, and they offered him a job. So
Okay.
he worked for them for 2 years. And Ivan Barrett is the owner of that company, and he always, whenever he met, and I have invested with him too. My first investment was with him too.
Okay.
So whenever I talk to him, he would say, I can put him to the hardest job. He won't say no. So he's the yes man. He always say, okay, I'll do it.
I got it. Yeah. There you
So I was happy. I wanted him to be in the business so that I had so much business. So I wanted him to take over my business. And my eldest daughter, she's also in the business. They own their own three gas stations. And my younger daughter is a doctor. She never had interest in any business.
Yeah.
So I wanted somebody to take care of my business.
Right.
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 Yeah,
That's
is
great.
So yeah, I
That's
mean
great.
that's a lot of our, especially in our community and other communities, like that's really the why, right? People have to answer that why question and understand why they're doing what they're doing. Quite often we find even in our community that businesses like gas stations and people have built this gas station empire, and their kids are going through college and going through professional route or doctor route like your daughter, and what they're finding is none of their children want to actually take over the business, right? And so but then if you switch over to something a little bit more passive, right? So gas stations, as you mentioned in the beginning, gas stations are a really hard business, right? Laundromats are a little easier from a operation standpoint. Well, multifamily, again, if you're passive, it's considerably easy. It's an asset. It's not a liability versus, something that you have to actually run. So we're seeing a very, very, nice change now even in our community, that if we are leaving a legacy, it's more of a legacy of this passive ownership of real estate and businesses versus handing over operations, because that's a tall order, right? There only certain people like your son would have the affinity to take over something that vast. So we're seeing a lot of change from that. The other thing I wanted to mention was you did something very interesting early in your career, is you looked at real estate as a way to offset your taxes. That was your first kind of thought process.
correct.
We know a lot of people in our community that are running businesses, they're making good money, and then they're buying additional businesses and continue to make that leap, but they don't do what you just did, which is looking at how do we reduce. Yeah, we're focused on how do we increase cash flow, increase income, but we don't focus enough on how do we reduce our tax liability. So can you give, our listeners are going to be in the same situation that you're in. Give our listeners a little bit of guidance or a little bit of, thoughts around what they should be doing, if they own a bunch of gas stations or other businesses where they're generating good cash flow. Talk to them a little bit about your journey on cost segregation and how that materially changed your tax liability.
So I'm very glad you asked that question. I always like to give an answer and give myself an example to especially our community. And this is directly to our community, wherever they're listening from. Work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
And a lot of our community, and that was my main reason of being a GP, because I had harvested some fruit in the last 7 investments that I did. I wanted to, because I knew lots and lots of other people in the same situation that I was in, paying a lot of taxes and not working smartly to save money on the taxes. So to be very specific, I was paying 200,000 tax at that time when I moved into multifamily. And today I'm paying zero. The only reason is the cost segregation. And last 5 years, 5 to 7 years was the best because now it's started phasing out. And I tried my best to talk to a lot of peoples in our community to explain them. But a lot of people who understood what I was talking about, they took the advantage.
Right.
They invested with me or somebody else, and I always tell them, don't you don't have to invest with me. Do your homework, but this is something I'm telling you that you can, instead of paying all that money to Uncle Sam, you can reinvest in the multifamily legally.
Yeah.
Legally. And I have been doing this for 5 6 years.
Yeah.
And now I moved on to the laundromat owners. So last week there was an open house where there were like 200 laundromat owners, and I requested the distributor that we buy equipment from to let me put a stall there and explain, though it was not related to laundromat business at all, but they did let me do that. And I got about 100 people sign up to learn more about the syndication process and the cost segregation.
Right. Right.
Excellent.
This is such a tool, such a nice tool for people to use it, especially people who are in business have passive income, or even if they're not in business, even if they have a W-2 job, but they have some kind of passive income.
Right.
Yeah.
So the good news is that I think people are starting to ask questions, right? Where we have been vocal, you've been vocal, you've been in the community out there just talking about these things. So I think, as long as we have clarity, I think there's power in it, right? And so, and we have to come from contribution. When Param and I talk about things, right, and it's exactly what your experience is, we don't just say, hey, invest in me, or my deal. We just say, hey, invest in yourself. Learn, right? Because if you're going to learn, you then hopefully are going to apply that knowledge, because there's so many different ways of working smarter, not harder, as you said.
Yeah.
And so I think that just makes a big, big difference. But you have to come in from, from contribution itself. We have seen you also give a lot of money. Why do you do that?
Well, that gives me peace of mind. So for years I have done this.
Uh-huh.
We have sponsored 15 kids in South India that
Okay.
we sponsored back in 2009 through a local charity here. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind. And we are always connected with the local rescue mission and some other international organizations as well. And I didn't do it myself. So we have a charity. And
Okay.
every cigarette carton we sold, we asked our distributor directly donate 15 cents to we started with 5 cents, now it's 15 cents to our charity. So that money automatically goes into our charity.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the components of why, right, that Rav and I, and I'm sure you have it as well, in our community and in a lot of communities, you hear this thing like, hey, money's not everything, money's not everything. But, I heard this really great analogy. Money is like oxygen, that the more you have, the easier it is to breathe, right? So we at least need enough to survive, at least need enough to make sure that we're all and our family is taken care of. But the other thing is, the more you have, especially for our community, the more you have, the more you can give, the more impact you can have in the world, and giving to others. And so that's one of the things that my parents had taught us, when we were younger. My dad had a very similar story to you, that, he came as an immigrant with really nothing in his pocket. And, we grew up kind of, pinching pennies or, being very, very frugal. But, no matter how much we had, we didn't have much, but my parents always taught us that it doesn't matter how much you have, you always have enough to give. So giving was always part of our it's part of our culture. It's part of, who we are as a family as well. And so that's another reason, like from a wealth creation standpoint in our community and for our family, like when me and Rav have had this conversation with our wives and our family that, as much as we can grow that wealth, we can also then have a bigger impact in the world and be able to give back to those that are not as fortunate. And so that's definitely, something that drives, the decisions that we make in our business world, right? Because we want to be in a position where we are, giving back to the community. And that's one of the reasons that I like multifamily, because we get to do that in the business itself by renovating the places, renovating the apartments, making them better, better places to live for the families that are going to be living in the apartments themselves. So that's why I really love this industry as opposed to any other industry where you're making money. This, has that giving component kind of
You're
built in
providing
as well.
you're providing a roof over somebody's head too.
Exactly.
They cannot
Exactly.
afford themselves. And I'll wrap that in one sentence. Everybody can raise their own kids, and it gives me a lot of pleasure when you help somebody else, somebody less
Beautiful.
fortunate than you. That's the life.
Yeah.
That's the living a good life if you can help somebody else rather than just your family. If you're just for your family, I mean, everybody does that. Even the animals do that.
That's right. That's right. It's
Correct.
beautiful what you just said. And funny how it works. The more you give, the more you get.
The more you get.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy how that works, right?
Yeah.
So, but the mindset of always be there for somebody.
You
and-
cannot get. You cannot give unless you get. So you get 10 times more.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, you get 10 times more.
Well,
I
that's
think
great.
this should be everybody's part of the life to give.
Yeah.
Whatever they can afford. Whatever they can afford, it builds up.
That's great.
Raji, any final thoughts for our listeners, in regards to what's coming up for you next, or what this year or next year might look like? Any advice that you want to give us?
So I always do this to invest in yourself, whatever you do, whether it's a laundromat, gas station, or even in life. Invest in yourself before you invest in any business or real estate. That means do your own research rather than listening to somebody else. Do your own research. There is lots and lots of information nowadays on online where you can do your own research before you put your hard money down.
That's great. Going back to the, obviously doing the research, and I love what you said about how you got started in multifamily is like, I learn by putting my money down, right? And so I can hear people talk about, hey, syndication, and, you put in and you get these returns and blah, 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 business plan, but you put 50,000 down so you can actually watch that whole process and actually learn it while you're investing in it. So I really like that model. Similar to what Rav and I did, but I think that also does wonders, right? That's part of the learning process, and why not? And you're going to be making returns on the way along the way as well.
So I invested that 50,000 in October. I got the tax K1 in March. That was 38,000 minus K1.
Uh-huh.
That enlightened me, and then I brought my partners to invest in deals too. So in the same year we invested $500,000.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So once
right.
you see it working, yeah,
I was
exactly.
tired of paying taxes. So I wanted something. Then when I saw that 38,000 K1 minus K1, I liked that.
Yeah.
I would really suggest anybody who's listening to this podcast is to, get with KayKay Singh or get with us, learn more. We can even provide you some guidance, some tools, some links. There's a lot of information on YouTube, on Google. Understand what cost segregation, the power of cost segregation is, and what it can do for you and your family, because it really can provide wonders. But
Yeah.
but come from understanding, right? That time that you're going to spend in yourself will pay you dividends, as KayKay said, tenfolds, right? And so that will happen because it happened to him, it happened to us, and it can definitely happen to you.
Absolutely, that's correct. And it's only a few years now because it's phasing out.
It's
Phasing
phasing
out.
out, right?
It's phasing out.
Especially the bonus depreciation.
Has
Yeah.
already it's at 80% this year and
80% this year.
50%. So it's the right time now Time
Correct.
is now, not wait for another year.
Right.
I have a couple of friends who have been waiting for a recession, and they can't get depreciation that much that we enjoyed in the last few years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So Paji, if somebody wants to connect with you directly, what's the best way to connect with you in your company?
They can go to Grow Rich Capital. That's our company, growrichcapital.com, and fill up a form. It directly comes to our CRM, and I get the notification when it's added, and I will definitely get back with them. Or they can schedule a call with me over on our website as well. 30
Okay.
minutes, 15-minute, whatever, and I'm pretty open to discussing and sharing and educating other people to enjoy the same benefits that we have all enjoyed.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Baji, for sharing your time today with us and our listeners. We really appreciate it. We learned a lot, and I'm sure folks are going to be asking more questions, especially around this tax liability thing, because you gave very, very specific examples of how that made an impact on you and your journey. So thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate it. Really inspiring to see what you've done in multifamily and entrepreneurship and in giving. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much for having me on your show to share my success story with your audience.
It was a
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
Our
it.
pleasure. Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into today's episode of the Spur Your Wealth podcast. We are your hosts, Param Singh and Rav Singh from Spur Equity. And remember, your journey to financial freedom begins with knowledge and action, where knowledge is power.
But action is superpower. So until next time, happy investing. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Spur Your Wealth podcast. We hope you enjoyed the valuable insights and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future episodes filled with actionable tips and strategies.
If you want more information about our investment projects, visit us at SPURequity.com. If you have an inspiring story to share and would like to be a guest on our podcast, email us at podcast@SPURequity.com. Until next time, happy investing.